Welcome to Colney Talk Podcast.
Hello everyone, hope you're having a fantastic day. Welcome to another exciting episode of Colney Talk Podcast, your bite-sized breakdown show. I'm your host Alex, first-time listeners. Glad to have you here, and to my returning guests, thank you for sticking with me. As always, I talk a bit about the Arsenal match, and pick out my top 3 Arsenal players who shined, and one odd player not good enough I get to call out. Apologies for the late delivery. I went back to watch the match. It was such a weird one. I mean, the best way I can describe this was some bad vibes that stopped our winning spirit. I mean, it's such a weird one in that Arsenal's dominance was evident, yet not reflected on the scoreboard. The press play was good, handled a lot of start-stop tactics that Everton brought in their breakup rhythm. It was well enough for us to overcome a lot of that, and we dished out a few scoring attempts. But again, it's what matters in the end, the score, to put up that point. But our ability to pin Everton back for long stretches was impressive. And in that, we created chances, but those chances to punch it in the final ball was marginal. I mean, really marginal. And credit to Everton on the defensive reaction, because cause and reaction when we try to make those things happen, Everton got in our way. They stood firm defensively, were on top of it, and they gave us a long run, and we just didn't have good answers. Our inability to capitalize on golden moments was a reoccurring theme throughout the opening 45 minutes. The good part, our build-up play was crisp, with Myles Lewis-Skelly making his Premier League debut. I mean, that's amazing. I mean, he debuts in Champions League and does that now in Premier League. It's so normal for him. Big credit to that player. And it's, to us, offering a unique dimension at left back with the circumstances and how we're dealing with challenges in that position. But then his ability to play that and invert, overload the midfield when in possession, as you would expect Calvert-Lewin and Zinchenko, and he just did it like scripted. That's credit to him. And it was that avenue that kept our progression and the stamp that we imposed on Everton very definite. I mean, Everton struggled to contain us. We made sure we pinned them down in positions and how we wanted to dictate this game. Dominance was our theme, but it was dominant up to the point where we needed to dominate that, as it should reflect on the scoreboard. And then the not so good, our finishing. Once again, it should be less of the complaint there, but more so of chances that are at least clear-cut chances, hitting the post and things like that. Despite creating several chances, we lacked that clinical edge to, put the ball in the net. Saka, Martinelli, and Odegaard all had opportunities, and notice I did not even mention Havertz, because it was 3 of them mainly that had those effects in terms of opportunities, and they typically would bury that. But Jordan Pickford for Everton was inspired in his form today for this match. Here I was hoping that we would give him a lot of restlessness, in attack and find our way through. For the first half, we didn't do that. So, as we were going in, I was hoping that for the second half, we would be able to get another gear and then get to that shift needed to get the full points. And then the second half, Arsenal's play tried to show increased emphasis on quick vertical passes to bypass Everton's midfield. But it just all led to more opportunities in transition, with Saka and Martinelli finding pockets of space behind Everton's fullback, but I didn't notice much of a threat. It was mainly from Saka, but nothing in combination to make that a difference. And as the match wore on, our inability to break the deadlock seemed to weigh heavily on everyone, myself, the fan, the crowd. It just felt like the vibes were just wearing off to unrest, and it felt that way, at least in the first half. Then we had to make changes. Introduction of Ethan Nwaneri for Odegaard tried to inject some fresh energy, which it did. In terms of our attack, we still struggled. We tried to find those final killer passes. It was there, but just inches off. There was this nice run from Havertz that got him to glide through and finish it off. But not only was he offside, but he just didn't find his feet in that connection in time. Everton, to their credit, though, they defended resoundingly well. I mean, often with all 11 men behind the ball, so they weren't really worried about trying to attack or separate themselves trying to go forward, because they knew they were going to frustrate us with the amount of attack and combinations that we were going to build, and it surely showed itself. Arsenal's approach to breaking down Everton's low block was interesting. We employed, I think, the patient build-up, because the frustration is a result of not finding a way, and there weren't really good answers in quick passes, just as you would think that the lanes get themselves open. And then direct attacks weren't there either, because sitting behind that low block, there were not lanes or spaces for you to do anything. So as much as we wanted to attack, we had to make sure that we didn't expose ourselves for a counterattack from just one bad possession, even though we may have dominated and tried to do some damage, because we've suffered something like that in the past. The flexibility that we had was designed to keep Everton defense guessing, and the way we switched it up, but more importantly stayed on that patient path, was how we were going to find a breakthrough, but we didn't have that. Ultimately, we lacked that incisiveness to make it count. And Arsenal was not short in trying different things, but the way I noticed, it just didn't change in a way that felt like, okay, this was another thing that could really affect the play. Maybe with player profile, maybe it was a way of how we would either pull away players or good dribblers to make something happen. I mean, we only had more of Saka doing that, but not much else. I was looking towards Trossard and Havertz doing something that reflected that reputation of big game step up. It just wasn't clicking. We got into desperation mode in the final minutes, and then we came up short. 0-0 draw. I mean, in front of the home crowd, it is so disappointing. I have no good explanation, none whatsoever, on what this performance was all about, and the outcome was just, I don't know, it was flat, and I really don't get it, because we dominated. The reflections, the game tilt, everything was as written for us to win this game based on how we played. A few things weren't that sharp, but we have played in a situation like this, and we know we got something. So it could be that we didn't get that intent on finishing a bit more than every other aspect, but here I am picking it apart, and I really don't want to focus there. Instead, let me focus on the three standout performances for this match. First player, Saka. He was constantly working it, trying to score or make an assist. I can say he delivered a good portion of that. Saka's ability to create chances was evident throughout, but at some point, I didn't think there were even that much service going to Martinelli, because Saka was doing enough. He was getting something going, and he really had that close opportunity to get that breakthrough. And, the moments that Martinelli was in the field to do something, he did the most until we had to really face our attention to Saka to get everything going. And Saka was not having it easy either, because to me, it felt like Odegaard and Havertz were not sharp enough in this game to take a bite out of the attacking attention that Saka carried all throughout the game. Because if they could focus all that on him, then we would almost feel toothless in a way. But to think that Odegaard and Havertz couldn't come in and affect it the way we wanted, that was another concern. Either way, there is no denying how good Saka had proved, how far he was good, just far above the rest of the players, and that is something worth mentioning. Second player, Declan Rice. Declan was just as involved in attack as you would imagine, as Odegaard would. And he also took command on how we would recycle the ball and drive forward. Because, again, as much as we want to attack, we had to make sure that we're not fully exposed or find any kind of opening for runs that we couldn't recover. And it wasn't an easy thing to deal with. But then finding those combinations and facing those scenarios of how Everton positioned themselves from a low block perspective, Rice made sure that he could see the whole field and, pin down any openings that Arsenal may have showed. He helped make sure that we didn't lose a lot of our balls. But in terms of passing, that's completely a different story, at least for the most players. Rice's position off the ball was excellent, always offering a passing option to relieve pressure, and that was huge for Myles Skelly. I mean, Rice's contribution in Arsenal's press up high at the pitch was incredible. But why didn't this translate to a better outcome? I mean, I guess we'll never know. It was a good game for Rice. Third and final player, I'm just giving it to Big Gabby. He was defensively present. I know we were all looking at him during our set piece plays. His positioning was great. His reads on Calvert-Lewin barely gave him a sniff. Then again, Everton had all their energy defending, so I wouldn't think there was much stock in what Calvin would do. And he was probably like a lone ranger up there, so there wasn't much to worry about. But Big Gabby was pushing forward. He pushed us as much as we would from the back to get those connections going, and he played really well. So defensively, there was enough for him to stand out and make sure that we would go back to the main program of trying to score and win the game. But, kudos to his performance. Now, let's talk about Martin Odegaard. While he usually is the creative heartbeat of our team, this match was an off day by his lofty standards. His usual crisp passing and incisive through balls were lacking. I mean, Odegaard struggled to control the ball in tight spaces between Everton's lines. But to me, the main thing were his shooting boots were below par. He seemed a step behind on his angles and too much touches that he shouldn't have been doing in a game like this. Perhaps, though, maybe playing off-ball switches in the box may have been as effective, or if not, the way to deal with this. But that's hindsight. So, again, we couldn't really see so many of the other combinations that they tried that was effective. The things that he didn't try is probably what I'm talking about now, but I don't know. I mean, I know this would eat at the captain in his performance and what he could have done. But let's see how he responds, because that's really where it really matters. So I'll leave it at that in terms of, how poor he played. The inability to break down Everton's low block is a concern, and it must be addressed because we have dealt with this before, came back, found answers, but, there's something more so about how we have struggled with it a bit more. The reliance on intricate build-up play will always be there. While aesthetically pleasing, we still need that balance, with more direct approaches. Maybe we don't have the players on this team, or maybe we're trying to find who that player would be, because Jesus and Havertz usually filled that role, but I don't know. There might be something else there. So when teams sit deep against us, we have found ways to be successful. So, there is just a lot to wonder, but the performances of Lewis-Skelly and Nwaneri, to me, provides hope for the future as far as Arsenal goes. Lewis-Skelly's Premier League debut was impressive in terms of offering a huge relief at left back. Losing Calafiori and Zinchenko puts us under a lot of pressure. I mean, that's the escape route when we talk about how poor we are, how we're not playing our best self, which is true. But then you can see Lewis-Skelly just having to show his ability to come in, play inverted, fullback, left back rather, comfortably, and such a credit to him because he did this without, looking like he missed a step. Nwaneri, on the other hand, when he was introduced, showed flashes of his talent, and that has many, as myself, excited about his potential. And I think he was that player that I'm probably touching on, who was much more direct in terms of running forward and the willingness to take on defenders head on, which continues to add the dynamics that we need in those situations as far as any attack slumps, struggles, or deficiencies that we are facing, like we did against this Everton game. So, while our attacking wasn't crisp, while we're struggling, this is the angle of the dynamic plays and player profile that needs to come in much sooner to get us the win or the points to really get ahead. So that's something we got to look forward to. Our attacking in the closing stages, we struggle, we try different things, but, we can't fault an efforts there. So there's going to be a lot of reflection. Now, these puzzles me in terms of how it puts Arsenal in a funk. And that's going back to Fulham's game. And that has to be resolved, really. But for now, let's all appreciate the positives from the performance, particularly with the exciting glimpses of what we saw from our academy players. This is the Arsenal way. It's always moving forward, thinking ahead, and making sure like these young players see their path and they can see clearly right now, especially the younger ones. Okay, that'll do it for this episode. Thank you all for tuning in. Remember, like, subscribe, and share. Until then, take care.